Here we will study facial proportions more closely. Different cultures have slightly different facial features in one way or another, but these general measurements to the human body should still be followed. What makes us each look unique are millimeter differences in each facial feature. There are also slight differences between males and females, as well as babies, children, and adults. Each face is uniquely different and beautiful. I encourage you to follow along and draw the portrait as we go. The first step is to draw an upside-down egg shape, as the top of the head is larger than the chin. I filled about 2/3 of a sketchbook page in order to have enough room to dictate the proportional distances of the face on the page. The second thing I did was to use a ruler to take a measurement from the top of the head and the bottom of the chin. Half of that measurement is where the eyes or eye line should be. I marked it and labeled it here for you. Don't believe me? Use the ruler to measure the top of your head to your chin. Hold the ruler to show the overall length, then with your other hand pinch and hold the ruler where your eyes are. The measurement you have your finger on should be close to half of the distance from the top of your head to your chin as a young adult. Measurements for babies and children are slightly different, as you can see here. Now that you know where the eye line is, you should divide the head in half vertically as well. I did this because faces are for the most part symmetrical, so I need to find the center of the head. At this point, I can measure the space for the bottom of the nose. That measurement should again be half the distance from the eyes to the chin. I would suggest you continue labeling things as you go in order to have a diagram to follow with approximate facial measurements on it. The next part I marked on this drawing was the space for the opening of the mouth. Generally speaking, the opening of the mouth should be about 1/3 of the space that is left between the bottom of the nose and the chin. I made a small mark for that and labeled it. Now I made the divisions for the eyes on this example. There should be an eye length between the two eyes that are drawn. I often suggest dividing the space on the eye line into fifths, as 2 of those spaces will be the eyes in the drawing. As I draw the eyes, I notice the shape of the eye opening itself is similar to that of an almond. There should be a slightly larger curve toward the inner part of the eye. Once those were drawn, I used the space between the eyes to measure the width of the nose. I made dash marks to show this measurement. Once I had the space, I drew 2 parenthesis marks that will make the nostrils and the letter U, or to be more specific, the shape of a recurve bow to suggest the space that is the bottom of the nose and the nostrils. Once the nose was drawn, I drew the iris, or the colored part of the eye, and the pupil, the black dot in the center of the eye. As I drew the eye, I represented the pupil and iris as a star-type shape with some additional lines to depict this for now. In a drawing with value, there should be subtle shifts in values in this area, as well as the simpler linear depictions I started with here. Once the eyes were drawn, I could use the pupils to predict how large the mouth should be. An exception to this width is that when people show different facial expressions, this distance tends to change a bit. Generally speaking, the mouth is as wide as the space between the pupils. When you draw the mouth, I always start with the top lip. There should be a letter M that depicts the 2 halves of the top lip. Those halves should divide from the middle of the nose, or the line you drew vertically. The line for the lip should generally disappear as it goes toward the line you drew to denote the width of the mouth. The bottom of the upper lip should have a U shape in the middle, and then a line that goes outward toward either side of the width marking. The bottom lip should be a larger U that disappears as it reaches the width marking. It's important to make the lips disappear as they get wider, or the face won't look correct. The width of the head should determine where the eyebrows are placed. It's important to take that measurement close to the eye line. I was a little above that measurement when I drew this, making the eyebrows slightly too high. Hair on the body should follow the form of the body. Notice how the eyebrows start from the middle and move away from the face. There should also be a slight arch to the eyebrows as they follow the orbital rim of the skull under your skin and muscle. Once the eyebrows were drawn, I made a mark about an inch down from the top of the head. This is where the hairline should start. Notice that hairstyles come up off of the head. In addition to hair, I drew one ear in frontal view. The ear should be approximately the same distance from the eyebrow to the bottom of the nose. The shape is similar to half of a peanut, with the tragus projecting out as a more pointed parenthesis just beneath the eye line. Once the ears are drawn, you can create the neck. Remember, the sternocleidomastoid muscle connects from the ear to the collarbone and slopes downward from there. If this space is too thick or too skinny, the portrait will look off. Initially, I drew mine too wide and had to adjust the curve to make it look appropriate. Depending on the individual you are drawing, that space might be wider. Wrestlers, for example, have thicker necks than most people. To finish this example, I drew hair on the left side of the head and depicted a little of the person's hairstyle while keeping the measurements. If you were to draw the head in different positions, these measurements would be the same, but the rotation in space would make the facial features look different. Therefore, slightly different shapes would need to be drawn in order to make the face look appropriate. Remember, whatever you are drawing, you should always break it into simpler shapes as you block in or outline the drawing. Once these shapes are correct, you can work on color value to give the drawing added interest. Hair and hairstyles are also made up of shapes before value is applied. Lastly, it is more interesting to draw someone expressing an emotion as it tells a story of what the person is doing or experiencing. Remember, art is about communicating a message in some way. What are you going to depict and why? Depicting unusual interactions between people, experimenting with materials, or adding collage can communicate messages as well.